My security camera showed me standing in my living room. But I was standing in the hallway the entire time, holding my phone, watching the live feed update in real time. No delay, no playback, no recording indicator. Just a live version of me, existing inside a room I was not physically in. And the strangest part, I wasn't shocked at first. I was watching it the way you watch something you assume has to have an explanation. Until the version of me on screen slowly turned its head toward the camera. Even though I hadn't moved at all. The phone vibrated in complete silence. I saw the notification before I understood it. Motion detected, living room, 8:40. I had been standing in the hallway between the bedroom and the kitchen when it appeared. The house was still. No movement, no sound, only the faint electrical hum of devices left running overnight. I did not move immediately. I waited long enough to notice that nothing else had triggered the alert. Then I opened the feed. The camera loaded faster than usual. No buffering, no delay. The living room appeared already in frame, already occupied. I saw myself standing in the center of it. I did not react at first. The body on screen was identical to mine. Same posture, same clothing, same stillness. Even the slight uneven weight shift onto the right leg matched what I had unconsciously done hours earlier. But I was not there. I was in the hallway holding the phone. The feed did not behave like a recording. There was no playback bar. No timestamp overlay consistent with stored footage. It looked continuous, as if the camera was capturing the present rather than retrieving the past. I moved closer to the doorway without realizing I had started walking. My own image on the screen remained motionless, but not inactive. It was observing, fixed directly at the lens, as if aware of being watched. Then it changed. A single step forward. Slow, measured. Not accidental. Not delayed. The movement did not resemble playback artifacts or lag. It looked intentional, like a decision being executed in real time. I checked the system indicators without breaking focus from the screen. The cloud status showed normal synchronization. No alerts. No maintenance logs. Nothing suggesting a live stream mode should even exist under the current configuration. Yet the feed continued as if it was live. The version of me inside the living room stopped again. The stillness returned, but it felt different from before. Not paused. Waiting. As if the system had acknowledged my observation and responded by holding position. I felt the space behind me shift even though nothing moved. The hallway light remained constant. The air remained unchanged. Still, the sense of alignment between rooms broke. Like two versions of the same space had stopped matching. I looked back into the camera feed again. My own reflection was no longer perfectly aligned with my position in reality. The angle was slightly off, as if the camera was no longer anchored to the room I knew. The geometry of the living room had changed in subtle ways. Distances felt compressed, edges too precise. The system should not have allowed a live capture without activation. The configuration required manual switching or external request. No such input had been made. The figure on screen did not move again, but its stillness was no longer passive. It was structured, deliberate, like it was holding a position until something completed synchronization. I did not understand when the duplication began. I only understood that both versions existed simultaneously without conflict, as if the system had accepted contradiction as normal operation. The question formed without language. If this was a recording, why did it react to being observed? And if it was not a recording, why was I still standing outside it, looking in at myself? The feed remained active. The image did not fade. It waited, unchanged, as if the next movement was supposed to come from me. The camera was not installed by me. I confirmed at the moment I opened its settings. The mounting angle was too precise to be accidental. It covered the sofa, a section of the corridor, and the exact center of the living room where movement naturally accumulated. The front door was outside the frame. So was the kitchen. Both excluded with intentional framing rather than technical limitation. I checked the layout twice. Nothing in the hardware suggested a default installation pattern. It had been positioned for selective visibility, not full coverage. That difference changed the function of the system. It was not watching the space. It was watching what passed through a controlled slice of it. I accessed the remote settings. The connection was active. No manual login history was visible. The access logs showed no creation event, No pairing event, no initial authorization. It behaved as if the system had always been connected. Then I found the first anomaly. A hidden section inside the interface labeled Linked Device 1. It was not part of the standard dashboard. It did not appear unless the system was forced into diagnostic mode through indirect navigation. I had not seen it before. There was no identifier attached to it. No name, no model, no IP address. Only a status indicator showing active. I tried to trace its origin through the network map. The structure responded with partial data. One stream was routed outside the visible topology, looping back into the system without leaving external trace. It created a closed circuit inside the house's own network. The logs showed activity that did not match user behavior. Most of the system remained idle during the day, but at night, one channel activated consistently. 2:12. The time appeared repeatedly across multiple days, not as a single event, but as a pattern embedded in system wake cycles. The camera did not simply record at that time. It shifted into a different operational mode. I reviewed the last 7 cycles. Each instance showed a subtle increase in data throughput exactly at that moment. No motion triggers, no manual input, just activation. The living room feed did not change visually, but the system load suggested additional processing layers were being engaged. Something was being analyzed that never appeared in the visible frame. I followed the diagnostic trail deeper. A device signature emerged briefly before disappearing again. It was detected near the camera's physical location, but it did not match any known hardware profile in the system registry. Not phone, not tablet, not camera accessory. It was classified as unidentified node. The system attempted to resolve it through external databases and failed. Then it stopped logging the attempt entirely, as if the search had been suppressed. I isolated the signal. It returned as a faint echo embedded in the internal network. It behaved like a device that existed only during active observation cycles. When I forced a full network scan, the interface hesitated for a fraction of a second longer than expected. Then the results stabilized. The unknown device was no longer listed, but the linked device 1 remained active. That inconsistency was not supposed to happen. A device could either exist in the registry or not. It could not disappear from detection while maintaining operational status inside a hidden channel. The system was treating it as both present and unregistered at the same time. I shifted focus back to the camera feed metadata. The timestamps aligned with the 2:12 activity spikes. Each activation corresponded with a moment when the network briefly expanded beyond its normal boundaries, as if something external had briefly synchronized with it. The structure of the apartment network suggested containment, but the behavior suggested interaction, not intrusion. Interaction. The distinction mattered. One implied breach, the other implied reciprocity. I checked physical proximity logs. The camera reported no additional devices in the apartment during those cycles. No entry, no movement, no external connections. Still, the hidden channel continued to activate. The system behaved as if something inside the apartment was not part of the visible inventory. Something that was not listed, not named, and not acknowledged by standard detection protocols. I returned to linked device 1. The status remained unchanged. Active, unidentified, persistent. The final anomaly appeared when I cross-referenced signal origin with spatial mapping. The source point did not align with any room. It aligned with the space around the camera itself, not in front of it, around it. The system was not observing the apartment. It was observing something coexisting with the camera inside the same physical position. The last log entry before the interface froze briefly showed only one unresolved field. Ownership. Blank. Not assigned. Not inherited. Not authorized. And yet still connected. The question remained without structure. If this device was not registered, and not installed, and not visible in any list, then what part of the system was responding to it every night at 2:12? I isolated the local network first. The scan loaded slower than usual, as if the system was recalculating topology instead of simply listing devices. 2 known devices appeared immediately. My phone, the router. Stable entries with predictable behavior patterns. Then a third entry surfaced. Unknown device. No name. No manufacturer string. No assigned category. It sat outside the normal hierarchy of connected hardware, as if it was being interpreted rather than detected. I mapped its activity timeline. It aligned with the same night cycles I had already seen in the camera logs. Every spike of traffic converged into a single behavioral pattern. Activation during deep inactivity hours, then complete silence before sunrise. The signal path was unstable. It did not anchor to a fixed room. It drifted between network nodes, but every resolved trace collapsed back toward the same physical area. The bedroom. I did not trust that conclusion until I repeated the scan 3 times. The result did not change. The network insisted the source was inside the private zone of the apartment where no registered devices existed beyond my own. I moved through the room without turning on additional lights. The phone stayed in my hand, screen brightness lowered. The network graph remained active, updating in real time as I shifted position. The signal did not weaken with distance. It strengthened. That behavior did not match Wi-Fi propagation logic. It matched proximity locking. I checked the floor area first. Nothing visible. No external hardware. No misplaced electronics. The room was clean in the way a controlled environment stays clean. Everything accounted for on the surface level. The inconsistency was not in what was visible. It was in what the system insisted was present. I began inspecting power access points. The first socket beside the bed looked normal. Standard plate, no irregular gaps. I ran my fingers along the edges, testing for looseness. The plate gave slightly under pressure. Not structural failure. Intentional modification. I removed the cover. Behind it, the wiring was not standard. A secondary module was integrated into the circuit. Compact. Embedded between power regulation components. It was not attached like an accessory. It was fused into the infrastructure layer itself. A miniature camera unit sat inside the housing. No external lens. No indicator light. No visible recording hardware. It only became recognizable once exposed directly, as if it had been designed to remain functionally invisible inside electrical systems. The feed on my phone flickered when I touched it. Not a disconnect. A synchronization adjustment. The camera in the wall was not independent. It was part of the same network loop I had been tracing. The living room feed, the hidden device channel, and this embedded unit were not separate points. They were fragments of a single distributed system. Observation was not occurring from one location. It was being compiled from multiple internal nodes. Inside the walls. I traced the wiring path visually. The module extended deeper than the socket cavity, merging into the internal circuit line that ran along the apartment structure. That meant the surveillance point was not localized. It was distributed through the building's electrical backbone. The system was not placed in the room. It was built into it. I checked the network logs again. A new pattern appeared immediately after the discovery. Daytime activity spikes, not night cycles, not automated bursts. Active connections recorded while I was logged out of the apartment entirely. Access timestamps matched periods when I was physically away. The system was not idle during absence. It was performing full network interaction cycles. Data transfer, configuration adjustments, and signal calibration were all occurring without my presence. That meant the apartment had operational occupancy, not digital. Physical. Someone else was entering the space while I was gone. The logs did not show forced entry. No alerts, no triggered alarms. The system treated those access events as authorized. I cross-checked authentication history. Still empty. No assigned user. No registered secondary account. No pairing record. Yet the system continued to accept activity from an external source as valid. The implication was not intrusion in the conventional sense. It was integration. The apartment recognized another presence as part of its operational structure. I stood in the center of the room, holding the removed socket cover. The embedded camera remained active even outside its casing, still tied to the network. The signal trace on my phone stabilized one final time. It converged again, not toward the living room, not toward the corridor, but directly toward the space behind me. The system was no longer mapping devices. It was mapping occupancy. And the occupancy count did not match what I knew was supposed to exist inside the apartment. I placed the extracted module on the table and watched the system update in real time. The network did not disconnect it. It reclassified it. The device remained active even outside its socket, still tied into the apartment's internal structure, as if removal was irrelevant to its function. The system interface showed no error state, no security alert, no breach notification, only a stable recognition cycle, as if what I had removed was never meant to be physically separate in the first place. That mismatch created the first break in the system's consistency. I expanded the network log view. The unknown device channel was still active, but its origin node had shifted again. It no longer anchored to the bedroom or the walls. It traced outward, beyond the apartment boundary. A neighboring structure. The signal path resolved through an external access point located in the adjacent building. The connection was not unstable. It was structured. It held a fixed identity across cycles, as if it had been intentionally registered in multiple environments. Then the timestamps aligned again. 2:10, 2:11, 2:12. Each activation corresponded with a verified entry event on the electronic lock system. I opened the access history. The log was not corrupted. It was complete. Every entry recorded with precision, down to millisecond resolution. The pattern was visible immediately once isolated. Night entries only. Consistent interval. Identical time window. Repeated authorization sequence without deviation. A second key appeared in the system. Not virtual. Not cloned. Registered at hardware level with full authorization privileges. The entry profile showed a linked identity. Her. The system did not treat it as an anomaly. It treated it as a valid secondary credential. Not temporary access. Not emergency override. Permanent authorization embedded into the lock architecture. I checked the creation timestamp. It did not match any recent modification. The credential had been active long before the first recorded surveillance cycle. That meant the access pattern was not initiated after observation began. It predated it. The system had been operating with two parallel access channels from the start. One visible, one hidden but legitimate. I cross-referenced entry logs with network spikes. Every activation of the hidden device channel aligned with physical entry events. The correlation was exact, without deviation across multiple days. The implication formed without resistance. The network activity did not originate from forced intrusion. It originated from authorized presence entering the space on a controlled schedule. I reviewed the camera system logs again. The apartment did not register forced breaches. No door alerts. No system overrides. Everything appeared normal in isolation. Only when layered together did the structure reveal the repetition. The second key was not used occasionally. It was used systematically. I mapped the pattern against absence records. My own departures aligned perfectly with those entry cycles. The apartment transitioned from single occupancy to dual access state every time I left. The system did not detect intrusion because, by its own configuration, none existed. Only continuity. The network topology shifted again. The unknown device signature stabilized for a brief moment, then collapsed into the same spatial alignment as the entry logs. The signal source and the physical access point converged into one coordinate. The neighboring building was no longer just a relay point. It was part of the access loop. The apartment was not being entered from outside in the way I had assumed. It was being synchronized between 2 points of authorized movement, both embedded in the system as valid states. I stood still while the logs continued updating in the background. The second key remained active, unchanged, still cycling through its nightly pattern without interruption. The final entry line refreshed once more. 2:12, same time, same access signature, same system response. But this time, the pattern did not close cleanly. One additional field appeared in the log structure that had not been visible before. Usage frequency. It was not marked as occasional or irregular. It was marked as recurring. The lock engaged at night with a sound I had not heard before. Not a forced entry. Not a glitch. A clean mechanical confirmation, followed by a single click that completed the cycle as if the system had recognized an authorized presence. The apartment did not trigger any alert. I stayed in the bedroom. I did not move toward the corridor. I listened through structure instead of sound, tracking motion through the subtle shifts in pressure between rooms. The house had its own acoustic hierarchy when it was quiet enough. Footsteps entered the space. Slow. Measured. Familiar with the layout without hesitation. The movement did not pause at the entrance. It continued directly toward the living room. No scanning behavior. No uncertainty. No defensive stop. The path was already known. My phone vibrated before I heard the second step. Motion detected. Living room. The alert arrived earlier than the sound reached me through the walls. That mismatch confirmed the system was not reacting to noise. It was reacting to presence. I checked the live feed. The camera activated without delay. No buffering. No initialization lag. A figure was already inside the frame. He did not look around. He did not test the space. He did not behave like someone entering an unknown environment. He moved with continuity, as if the room had already been part of his routine for an extended period. The neighbor from the building opposite. He crossed directly into the center of the living room and sat down in the monitored zone. The exact position aligned with the camera's primary focus point. No adjustment. No hesitation. The placement was precise enough to suggest prior calibration. The system recorded his presence without labeling it as intrusion. That detail held longer than everything else. I stayed in the bedroom doorway, partially concealed, observing both the feed and the physical space at once. The apartment was no longer split between real and recorded. Both layers were synchronized. Then I heard movement behind me. Not in the hallway. Inside the bedroom. A second presence, confirmed by sound structure alone. Controlled. Stable. No urgency. No disruption of spatial rhythm. The camera feed remained focused on the living room, but audio capture expanded. A voice emerged from the bedroom space, not directed at anyone specific, but positioned as if it belonged to the system itself rather than the room. The tone was not reactive. It was corrective. The message carried timing sensitivity, a reference to sequence, not explanation, not justification, only alignment with an expected order that had been interrupted. The implication formed without needing confirmation. The event I had triggered by exposure was not the first stage of discovery. It was a deviation from an ongoing process. The neighbor in the living room remained seated. Still no reaction, no search pattern, no acknowledgement of surveillance. His behavior matched someone operating inside a pre-established structure rather than entering a new one. I reviewed the network status again. The hidden device channel activated at the same moment. 212, the same cycle, but now it extended beyond the apartment boundaries. Two nodes were active simultaneously, interior and external, both synchronized, both responding to the same timing sequence. The system did not treat them as separate events. It treated them as components of a single operation. The bedroom presence remained unseen, but its influence was registered across the system logs, not as a user, not as an intrusion, as a coordinating layer. The living room camera adjusted slightly, almost imperceptibly, reframing the seated figure without mechanical repositioning. The change occurred at software level. The framing shifted as if responding to an internal instruction. The neighbor was not being observed as an unknown subject. He was being recorded as a confirmed element, a classification tag updated in the background log stream, replacing uncertainty with recognition status. The structure of the apartment network stabilized into a single unified pattern. Not surveillance, not intrusion, coordination. The final system line updated without triggering any visible alert. Observer status revised. And the revision did not assign me outside the system. It placed me inside it. The system stabilized into its final configuration without any visible transition. There was no reset sequence, no reboot indicator, no consolidation event. It simply stopped behaving like a fragmented network and started operating as a single structure. All cameras were active at once. The living room feed, the embedded socket module, the hallway sensor, and the external node from the neighboring building were no longer separate streams. They merged into one continuous observation layer, synchronized in real time. The interface changed its logic without warning. It no longer displayed devices as independent units. It displayed coverage zones. Every zone overlapped. Every overlap pointed inward. I reviewed the activity history. The logs did not show intrusion events anymore. They showed continuity events. Entries that described movement not as violations, but as expected transitions between states of the apartment. The system had rewritten the classification model. Nothing was being flagged as external, because nothing had ever been external. The hidden device channel remained active, but it was now labeled as structural input. The same signal that previously appeared as an anomaly was now treated as baseline data collection. The apartment was no longer being monitored. It was being maintained. I checked the live feed. She was in the frame. Not entering. Not leaving. Already positioned within the system's expected geometry. Her presence did not trigger detection logic because it was not treated as new. She stood in the living room with the same spatial confidence as the neighbor, as if both of them had always been part of the same operational map. No concealment behavior existed. None was required. The system had no concept of hidden participation anymore. Only assigned roles inside a stable structure. The final device entry appeared without triggering any initialization noise. Guest, no installation log, no pairing sequence, no source trace. It simply appeared in the device hierarchy as if it had always been pending activation. Then it activated. The activation did not change the system state. It confirmed it. All streams synchronized to it for less than a second, then returned to equilibrium, as if acknowledging a completed alignment. I checked the external camera feed. Across the street, a single window was illuminated. The angle matched every internal camera line simultaneously. Living room, hallway, embedded socket view, external node. All perspectives converged on the same spatial point. The system had no need to adjust framing anymore. Everything already aligned. I expanded the timeline beyond recorded logs. The system allowed access without resistance. There was no boundary at the start of recording history anymore. Only continuous indexing. The earliest entry I could retrieve did not mark initialization. It marked stabilization. That meant the system did not begin when I installed or discovered it. It began when conditions became suitable for observation. Guest remained active in the device list, but it did not behave like a device. It behaved like a final confirmation layer, sealing the structure into a complete loop. No alerts existed. No unresolved anomalies remained. Only one metric stayed uncalculated: duration. The system had no starting reference point for how long observation had been active before the first notification ever appeared. And without that reference, the entire timeline lost its origin.